Greetings, great things. It is Q Talks once again, and I am back with another episode of our Black Swan Theory podcast. So, there has been a little gap between the last episode and this one, so I would like to apologize for that. And this is actually episode number 14, believe it or not. So, I'm not quite sure if I'm going to continue with the podcast in this series or switch it up, kind of switch up the topics. But at the moment, I'm happy, and I'm happy with the way the topics kind of have bled into one another. So, yeah. Today's topic is about the moment you stop explaining yourself. As always, if you see me glancing down, I'm looking at the notes that I have put on my phone just so that there's a bit of structure and I don't forget the points that I want to make, right? So, there comes a point when you stop explaining yourself, and at that point, everything changes, right? Some of the signs, some of the indicators that you are at this point, at this space, is that you realize that, well, before you're at this space, right, you may find yourself wanting to be understood by everybody. That was a big one for me. I always seek to understand, and therefore I always expected that to be reciprocated or hoped for that energy to be reciprocated. That's not the case, right? So you might be wanting to be understood, you might be over explaining yourself to avoid being judged, and you may be feeling the need to constantly explain your actions, your choices, your behavior, your decisions, your perspective, right? All in an attempt to avoid being judged and to create this idea that, okay, I'm being understood, others understand me, they get where I'm coming from. This can, when you step out of this mentality, right? When you decide, okay, I'm not explaining myself anymore, then you suddenly realize or find yourself saying less, but meaning more in the less that you say, allowing people to misunderstand you, which again, this was something I struggled with a lot. I never wanted to be misunderstood. I always wanted to be understood. But when you start to understand that, first of all our perspectives, our interpretations are different, you have to make a choice to be understood by others at the cost of no longer recognizing yourself, or to truly know and recognize yourself despite being misunderstood by some or the majority, right? Um, Also, boundaries. This is a big one because this ties into not wanting others to misunderstand you. When you have certain boundaries that you understand are necessary for your own protection, your own growth, right? Your own preservation, it's important that you exercise these boundaries. When you feel that you cannot exercise your boundaries without explaining them to others, without others understanding it, you are doing a disservice to yourself sometimes, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if they understand it or not. All that matters is that they respect it, right? You can spend a lot of time explaining something to someone for them not to respect it, for them not to understand it, and for them to choose to cross your boundaries anyway. But your boundaries need to be in place, and they need to be enforced. They don't need to be explained, they don't need to be understood, but they need to be in place, they need to be enforced, and they need to be honored and respected, right? When you are transitioning into this way of being, you find yourself feeling more grounded in yourself. The reason you start to become more grounded in yourself is because you're starting to become more grounded in your identity, and your identity is becoming more solid, right? Whereas before, maybe aspects of your identity or the ways that you would ground yourself had a lot to do with your external circumstances with other people, and that is what kept you kind of afloat, right? Because you were never settling into yourself. You were always kind of like floating over here, wondering what this person's thinking, wondering how they feel about you, wondering if this person understands you. And all of that keeps you out of here, which is where you need to be. Ooh, sorry to the mic. So sorry to the mic. But I hate putting my mic here, guys, because I feel like I'm a very expressive person. I always end up like putting my hand on myself. So I'm really sorry if that was like the worst noise. So, why does this happen, right? My beautiful black swan, I know this is a question we find ourselves asking a lot. Why? Why? What is the reason? And why this happens is because we're starting to become more secure in our decisions. Like I said, we're becoming more grounded in ourselves and our own identity. We're starting to realize that it's not what others think, it's not what others believe or what they understand, it's what we know, right? Because there's a difference between believing and knowing. So you start to care less about what others believe, and you're starting to care more about what you know. And knowing yourself comes hand in hand with knowing that not everybody is going to understand you. That is an important realization, and that is absolutely okay. Not everybody needs to understand you, and you don't need to over explain yourself because that comes from a space of seeking validation. These things are the things that I sometimes feel contribute to anxiety, right? Because we are thinking too much about how we are being perceived, how others are perceiving us, what they are thinking. And it's not our business, right? Our business is to show up as ourselves as powerfully and completely as we can. And we allow everything else to be what it is. And we allow others to respond to that as they may. When we try to curate and mold other people's responses to us, right? So again, when you're trying to create, to mold, to predict another person's response to you, you're putting more weight and importance on their opinion, their thoughts, which something that I, recently kind of like heard in passing was that, we spend a lot of time thinking, what is this somebody thinking about me? La 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 la. People's thoughts change so quickly, right? If we look up how many thoughts an average person has in a day, right? Let me Google that right now. How many thoughts per day? Research suggests the average person has over 6,000 thoughts in a day, right? Within 24 hours. So, in those 6,000 thoughts that a person has, right? Which they're going through those thoughts like that, right? How many of those thoughts do you think a person is allocating to you? How important do you think you really are in somebody's mind, right? That out of the 6,000 thoughts that they're thinking, you're so worried about making the maybe 10 thoughts that they might think about you out of 6,000 thoughts that day. You want to just make sure that those 10 thoughts that they're thinking about you are the way you want them to think about you, because it matters so much, right? Because those 10 thoughts are the thoughts that they're going to have in their mind for the rest of their life. They're not going to think other thoughts. They're not going to think about other people. You're the most important thing. So you need to make sure that you're coming across exactly how you want them to perceive you. It's just it's just BS, and it's just unnecessary, right? Our own thoughts, your own 6,000 thoughts in your head are the ones that you need to be focused on, are the ones that you need to be thinking, how are they going? And if you have 6,000 thoughts in your head and you're spending a lot of those thoughts thinking about other people and their thoughts, do you see how obsolete it becomes, how unnecessary, how ridiculous even? Because what do we know about what another person is thinking? So why are we using our own thinking to mold another person's thinking? It's none of your business. It has nothing to do with you. And even though it feels so important, right? It's irrelevant. And the more we start to accept that, the more we turn the lens, the attention inward, right? Onto what really matters, right? Because why do you care so much anyway? Is there things about yourself that you're choosing to ignore, to cast to the side, which is why you have so much time to think that you care about what's happening in the mind of others outside of you, when realistically that's irrelevant, and you're actually using that to distract yourself from thinking about what you need to think about, what you need to be doing, and where you need to be at. Over explaining comes from that space of validation, like I said, and to tie it back, that anxiety, these feelings that we feel, can easily be avoided when we stop placing this importance outside of ourselves, right? When we put the importance back into ourselves, our thoughts, our feelings, right? For me, there have been so many times that I have over explained myself, right? That I've cared too much, too much. It's very recently that I've actually, through a close relationship of mine, realized that I just spend too much time sometimes thinking about what another person is feeling about me when it doesn't really matter. Oh, my storage, guys. Even with my own relationship with my mother, I spend a lot of time trying to explain myself to her, when again, she's my mother, she's gonna love me, she loves me trying to get her to understand me when it's in some ways beyond her grasp is only me pouring salt into my own wounds, when I walk away from all of that explanation, right, and feel like, oh, she still doesn't get me, oh, they still don't understand me, oh, you know, if they don't understand me or they don't want to understand me, I guess it means they don't love me or they can't love me. That's your own perception, right? And it's not fair even for you to place that on others. Okay? You need to decide when peace is more important than being understood, because the thoughts, they can go on forever and ever and ever and ever, right? Just because they said 6,000 thoughts is the average, it doesn't mean that we can't exceed that. And if you want to keep going and you want to think about every single person, trust me, you're going to have more than 6,000 thoughts a day. And most of them are not even going to be about you. And it's your life, right? Every day is ours for the making, ours for the taking. So it's so important that we start to redirect and shift our thoughts and our feelings, right? What I want you guys to take away from this is that you don't need to explain yourself to be valid. I think as a black swan, because of the isolation that we deal with, the feeling separate to others that we deal with, the experiences that have been very difficult that we've dealt with, we have a deep capacity for understanding, and we want that to be reciprocated. We want that to be reflected, and we also want to show others that. But sometimes it's not about that, because when you're doing it as a form of validation and you feel like if others don't understand you, then you're not real or you're not important or you're not valid, that is not okay. You have to understand yourself first and be valid to yourself first. And that is, in fact, the most important perception. Not being understood is sometimes the price of being authentic. Trust me, I know. Trust me, I know. Okay? So, my beautiful black swans, I love you so much. Never forget that your boundaries do not need explanations. The right people will not require constant justification from you. And silence can be self respect, right? Silence sometimes speaks louder than anything that you could say. The moment that you stop explaining yourself is the moment that you start standing fully in who you are. Because trust me when I say to you that I see you, I know you, and your beauty, your rareness, your uniqueness needs no explanation, validation. It speaks for itself. Okay? I love you and I can't wait to see where this community is taking us. I would love to hear from you. Please comment, your experiences with this topic, your thoughts, your opinions. As always, if you have any topic suggestions, I'm always here. If you have any questions that you want me to answer to make a video about, I will do it. And yes, I love you and I can't wait to see you in the next video. Stay rare.